Good evening, everyone. This is Enrique Sanchez, and welcome to Spanish United Radio. This afternoon, we have a very special guest. Would you be kind enough to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
My name is Eddie Poland. I'm a candidate for Burbank City Council.
Welcome, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
As we spoke through the workshop that we met a couple days ago for the Toluca 101 housing, we spoke a little bit about the social issues concerning housing and rent control and all that. So as council member, if you get elected council member, like what would you do differently from your predecessor in terms of housing, rent control, and having affordable housing? Because that is a crisis affecting a lot of people in the city of Burbank.
Well, my plan, I have been endorsed by Mayor Nick Schultz and Vice Mayor Nikki Perez, who have taken leadership positions on housing and have started a process which I fully support and intend to continue. Right now, the city of Burbank is engaged basically a listening project to get community input to in preparation for making some really enacting some serious tenant protections and really looking seriously at a rent cap.
Yeah, because it is something that is affecting a lot of people, and like what I was listening to there at the workshop is that there are laws that are put in place that prevent protections for many people, and that's what's causing the rent crisis to go out of control. And I'm not sure if you remember during the Q&A, I had mentioned that another option aside from building more housing units that are low income, is to take property units that are office spaces that are empty, because many people working remotely, and convert them into affordable housing. Do you think that that'll be a viable option?
Well, I guess I'd take a step back from that because what you're talking about is rezoning, which is really important because that's one of the problems is that when all these when all these things are approved by the development department, they're approved based on certain permitted uses for the spaces. So clearly, I believe that we certainly have to change a lot of our codes and policies in Burbank. This is Burbank, as many cities in California, is still living in this legacy of this suburban dream, this post-war suburban dream, and that no longer relates to the reality of today. So, your idea of converting existing space and existing commercial space into rental, yes, I mean that's certainly a great thing to look at, but the challenge is that we have to start changing the way our planning department, our community development department is kind of looking at the situation. And that's certainly one of the options that we should be looking at.
Hmm.
So yes.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I asked because I have a civil rights organization primarily for Hispanic people, which is Spanish United, which I had spoken to you when we were at the workshop. And one of the things that a lot of the people within the Hispanic community come to me is that what's affecting them more than anything else is affordability. There are many Hispanic people that have to commute 3 or 4 hours just to afford rent, and I feel that in the long run, people having to commute longer hours just to afford rent is going to become unsustainable, and I feel that that is a serious problem that many cities, and particularly like in Burbank, for example, is it's a big concern because most people work in Burbank because all of the studios and all the jobs are there, but many of them cannot afford in where they live, and many of them have to commute longer hours. So I always like to listen to the concerns of the community, and then I try to pitch them out to the politicians, to the councilmen, and to the city council, because there needs to be a solution because uh people are won't be able to live where they work.
And look, I think you're 100% right. The reality is, just to be frank, Burbank city policy is racist.
Right.
I think that there is no question that our community development department, really at the direction of years of previous councils, has really erected walls to keep people out of Burbank. that it's fine to come and work here, but there's the legacy of the sundown laws, right? So that's from years
Hmm.
ago. But
Right.
the more modern interpretations of this and the way it's playing out are things like Burbank's refusal to participate in mass transit because of this premise that the people that are on those buses are not the people that we want here in Burbank.
Right.
And even down to the level of we have a bicycle bridge that's been planned, that's been paid for, that's ready to go, and it's been stopped by a local community group because of their fears of homeless people riding over on their bicycles and stealing catalytic converters and bicycling out of the city. So there's a really kind of basic racist premise that has prevented not only the building of new housing units, but also, public transportation and just general accessibility to our city. And that's something I hope to be. It's slowly starting to change. It's a big battle, and I think that this election is particularly important because two of the people running for city council are people that really want to turn the clock back. And that, right now we have a progressive majority on council, and I intend to continue that and to be supportive. Our next mayor is going to be the first Latina young queer mayor in our history. And I think that's going to be actually a start of a major culture change that's going to benefit our city.
Oh, really? Wow. I did not know that. So once Nick Schultz leaves office, she'll be the one that's going to be the next mayor.
Yeah, Nikki Perez is the vice mayor right now, and there's no the way that the mayor is selected each year by vote of the council.
Mhm.
So by right, Nikki will be the mayor next year, and
Okay,
that's my expectation.
so it's not by popular vote where people vote for mayor. It has to do with the rotation of the councilship.
Yeah, that correct. And it's really based on just the practice that it rotates through. I mean and certainly, Nikki is a bit of a lightning rod just because of who she is. And she represents the type of change that many people in Burbank are not enthusiastic about, but not the majority. See, this is what we have to remember that, Burbank is a community,
Right.
and while the loudest of them have traditionally been, again, I'll frankly say racist,
Hmm.
that no longer is a majority, and that we have to really work hard, to change that feeling and also to change overall representation, on our not only just our city council, but on our boards and commissions. Frankly, there's not a lot of diversity in that, and that hurts our city.
Yes, that's one thing that I noticed about Burbank is that even though you have minorities that work there, the uh, the government of Burbank tends to be majority Caucasian. That's for sure. But I thought that Burbank was a liberal city. I didn't think that there would be those issues of racism, at least not in today's society. Maybe 30, 40 years ago, probably.
Yeah, and the problem is that it's really hard to eradicate racism because racism has a way of really becoming ingrained, and not just, it's not just like the way people talk to each other, but it's actually in the way that policies are administered. And it's very, and there's a certain reality that the legacy that built Burbank hasn't gone away.
Mm.
And and again, you could see it by actions of our council. And the most obvious to me, because I'm on the Transportation Commission,
Mhm.
but the obstructionism that Burbank has expressed in not working with Metro to really connect our region, because that's, it's, and again, it's totally based on a racist mindset, and that
Right.
we need to correct that.
Right, of course, because Burbank is a major city. It's also a transportation hub. Many people have to pass through Burbank to get to places. And what better way to bring more income into the city is by building a metro. Like I remember a couple of years ago, there was a huge backlash against the building of Walmart in
Yes.
Burbank. And I remember that Walmart went through a lot of trouble to build, and Burbank primarily, like you mentioned earlier, they didn't want a certain demographic to get there. But I feel that over time, as the people are conditioned that that it will bring incentives or bring more income into the city, I think it will be well, because the issue is that many people have is that certain people can bring crime, and not necessarily have to do with racial minorities, but it also has to do with people that are transits, people that are, like you say, homeless or down on their luck. So I feel to offset that there needs to be more public safety, and I feel that public safety is a major factor in keeping law and order. Is not a political issue; it's a common sense issue, and I feel that if there's more resources put into public safety in addition to having the metro built in, I don't think it's going to be a problem.
Yes, and I admire your optimism because I mean the reality is, I'm a white guy, so I've never had a problem with Burbank police, but I recognize that that's because of my status as a white person. Um, Burbank for many years really had a really bad history of dealing with racial minorities in our city. And that has changed. We're no longer being supervised by the courts. But there's still a lot of systemic, and some of it's not necessarily racism. I mean, right, some of it's just is actually economic.
You're right.
This sense of that if you can't afford to own a car, then you're a suspect person. And again, the reality is because you look at transit, you look at it's a generational thing as well that people don't necessarily, young families either can't afford or don't want to have multiple cars,
Right, of course.
right? They're looking for opportunities. You can't not have a vehicle. I mean, it's almost impossible. But the more that we can support people getting around, and then you're all of a sudden talking about fighting the climate, crisis because the number one cause of harmful carbon emissions is vehicular traffic. So,
Mhm.
forget that just the economic part of it. It's just that we need to cut down on car travel, and then we can actually, help the environment.
Oh, absolutely. But I feel that the only way that can be done is that there needs to be incentives, because a lot of people do not want to transition from fossil fuel to electrical, primarily because a lot of the electrical cars are more expensive, unless the government provides some type of incentive where people are encouraged to buy cars. Let's say, for example, the government will pay like 30%, and the buyer pays the other 70%, then people are more willing to transition from fossil fuel to electrical fuel. But many people have told me that they would like to, make the environment better, but again, like you mentioned, it has to do with economics. Many people that have fossil fuel cars won't be able to afford electrical cars because they are expensive. So there needs to be an incentive, and an incentive is not necessarily a handout. It's, especially to those that are conservative or right wing leaning, but people need to be given some type of an assistance to encourage people to transition from one thing to another to better themselves. Like when I was in Europe, I saw that in many European countries and many Asian countries where the government subsidizes a good portion of a lot of things, particularly transportation. And they've been able to fight the issue of fossil fuel emission, but I think America needs to do their part, especially California, which is the leading state when it comes to renewable energy. There needs to be incentives to create people to transition from fossil fuel cars to electrical cars, or to encourage people to use mass transportation. But there needs to be more lines built in order for people to use more public transportation, because the distances are too far.
100%. I mean, honestly, I love riding my bicycle and I commute everywhere by bicycle if I can. So, but the reality is if I have to get somewhere, so I open up my Google Maps and I first look like, can I get there by my bicycle? And then if that's not possible, then I look, can I get there in public transportation? And then the final option is driving my car. And so the reality is what we need to do is create options for people. So, so financial incentives, I think, yes, that certainly should be part of a solution. But until until the average person can, figure out where he has to get to point A to point B, and that there really are options besides driving that are not, that are reasonable, then it's hard to make a transition. So that's why we kind of need this kind of all hands on deck, where it's not just about getting people to get out of their cars, it's providing the option so that they want to get out of their cars and that they have a reasonable way of getting around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also a lot of people also stress that one of the reasons why they don't take public transportation, even if it's within access, again, has to do with public safety. So you being part of the head of the Transportation Commission, like, would you increase more security into the transportation networks if there is a metro being built or there's going to be more lines being expanded?
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting question because I think it's a very complicated question because again, I think the actual security is a piece of it, okay? But the reality is that I think that the reason we have so much crime in our public transit is that the safety net is completely gone. And
Exactly.
right? And so the subway becomes the place of refuge for people that are suffering and that many are in crisis. And realistically, you need police presence because I think they were starting off at a really bad place. That there's already been this breakdown in our whole like this. I call it breakdown the social contract, in the sense of I mean I ride the subway. And frankly, it's gotten better lately. I think, Mayor Bass has had this surge of police, so that I think that has helped. But long term, we need to be much more holistic approach to it. And part of the safety thing is actually the first and last mile piece of it. You have to feel comfortable getting from your home to the bus stop or the metro. It has that has to be easy and convenient. And when you're waiting for a bus or the train, you have to feel safe. And a lot of that stuff's kind of environmental that we need to be looking at too. So I think it's like on every single level, we need to, we need to fix that. And then we need to start building in a way that the transit and where people live and where they work are actually integrated, because right now they're not.
Exactly, exactly. Many of my Hispanics constituents that I speak to have told me the same thing, that many of them that rely on public transportation, they're not connected to any transportation stations. So that's also another factor because many Hispanics don't have cars and many of them don't have bikes. So many of
Right.
them, have to rely either on public transportation, let it be the bus or let it be the train. And many of them have told me that they would like to see more stations being built in their areas because many of them have to walk a couple of miles just to get to the nearest station. So there
Okay.
really needs to be more stations built, not just subway stations, but also bus stops in every place because many people have to commute very far to work. And let me tell you, I represent a huge amount of people, and many have told me that especially with the cost of living being very, very high, it's getting very difficult. And many of them are really struggling. And my focus in Spanish United is the well-being of the Hispanic community and to help them be empowered, to help them to prosper, and to help them integrate. And you actually had a very interesting comment earlier. One of the reasons why many Hispanics are not able to integrate into Burbank primarily has to do is that many of them find it difficult to integrate in the city of Burbank. There needs to be more bilingual services, bilingual language places and also to get people more exposed to Hispanic people because many of the workers that are in Burbank are Hispanic. So I
Okay.
feel that that's a good way of getting the non-Hispanic community more engaged. And I do a lot of workshops where I invite Hispanics and non-Hispanics to intermingle with each other to not only to get them to know their neighbors, but at the same time to get them not to have stigma, because a lot of people have stigma of Hispanic people primarily is that they see them as the other. So I feel that the more Burbank integrates the Hispanic population, I think part of the stigma will go away, and that Hispanics are just like everybody else that work and live and try to live.
Oh, yeah, 100%. That I think it's really every level, and then of course, I mean, you have an opportunity to register more Hispanic voters because that's the bottom line. It's all about how many votes we get at the ballot box, and people need to vote their interests, and I think a lot of times the most vulnerable people also are the most unheard, you know,
Exactly,
and that
exactly.
we need to change that.
And I do have to say, many Hispanics are conservative by nature. They vote on social issues, but like you said, many of them tend to vote against their own interests, primarily out of ignorance, and also because they don't see the Democratic Party. And again, I'm not demonizing anybody, but this is what many Hispanic people have told me that a lot of Hispanics are leaving the Democratic Party primarily because they feel that the Democrats are not really representing their views, and many of them, unfortunately, are going to the Republican Party, even though they don't represent them, but they lure them in with, we believe in traditional values, etc. And unless the Democratic Party does something to get Hispanics to vote Democrat or to vote for their interests, many Hispanics are not going to be voting at all because they feel that why am I going to vote this particular candidate if they don't represent us? So I feel that the Democrats need to work a little bit harder to try to get Hispanics to vote. And I always encourage Hispanic people to vote. Hispanics United, we are a nonpartisan organization. We don't adhere to any ideology, but like you said, I always encourage Hispanic people to vote. So I think it's very important that the more Hispanic people vote, the better it is for them in the long run.
Yep. Yeah, yeah. I mean, absolutely. And the challenge is that while we talk about like the Democrats versus Republicans, I think for most people it comes down to personalities. And they're looking for someone that they, feel somehow, represents their views. And you're right. Sometimes people just stop on one, they stop on one issue, and sometimes it's religion for some people or something specific about marriage or abortion and those type of issues. And they kind of lose sight of the holistic, the big picture, right? And we need to be looking at all these things. But I think
Absolutely.
but your criticism, I think, is well founded and accurate.
Absolutely, because I feel that you know, Hispanics, as much as many people don't want to acknowledge it or not, the Hispanic vote is what decides elections in the United States. Hispanics represent almost 20% of the population. We outnumber African Americans, Jews, and homosexuals and Asians, etc. And they are a big voting bloc. As much as many people don't want to acknowledge, we are a big voting bloc. And unless um, progressives and liberals reach out to that voting bloc, they're going to be losing elections. And I feel that it's very important that they try to reach out to that voting bloc because, again, Hispanics contribute a big portion to the economy, and yet we have least of the benefits.
Mhm.
And I feel that it's very important that politicians try to reach out to the Hispanic community and try to listen to their needs, not like, okay, you're there but we are a visible minority that we need to have respect, basically. I feel that many Hispanic people don't get respected in many council meetings. I've gone to many council meetings myself in different places, and many people have looked at me like, what's this Hispanic guy doing here? It's like their only view is you're there to work for us. You're not there to say anything. So that needs to start changing. So I feel that the more Hispanic people are included in government, I think the better off government will be in general.
Yeah, I mean, again, I mean, I think this coming year with Nikki Perez as our mayor, I mean, it's going to give us a nice, really visible, person and kind of an example of someone, and she's a young, she's a young person as well that hopefully gives, gets people motivated and excited and feel that it's possible, to climb that ladder and to, to really be in the position to make change.
Because it's very important because we're not living in the era where Hispanic people or minorities or poor people don't have any importance. We do have voices, and I feel that the more we get our voices heard, um, the more is gonna be in benefit towards society. Like yesterday, I was at a strike over in Burbank where the animators were having a big rally. I'm not sure if
Hmm.
you're familiar with that or not.
Hmm.
And many of these animators are vocal because they're afraid of losing their jobs to AI. And I feel that you know, when people organize and get together, it really does a lot of good things. And the beauty about living in the state of California is that we have unions we can organize. Because in places like Texas, for example, it's illegal to even have a union. You could get in a lot of trouble
Right.
in Texas. So I feel that it's very important that when people organize and speak, things can be done. And I hope that you running as a city council, you could be that spark that could help the city of Burbank prosper and being inclusive of all people.
I appreciate that. Just share a little of my personal history. As a teenager, I spent a summer organizing with the United Farm Workers Union.
Mm.
We were organizing. This was 1977, and I helped organize nursery workers in Monrovia who had never had a contract. And I mean, so I've been involved in labor organizing really for my whole life. And I believe in it, and I believe the power of unions and guilds that really to raise up workers. So they're a really important player at the table. And the reality is that it's through our unions that we've won so many hard fought battles for livable wages and reasonable worker protections. So that's an ongoing battle. This is we're we still don't have livable wages in many sectors. So you talk especially like the hotel industry, and that we really need to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely, because people need to live and people need to have a living wage to cover their basic necessities. With the minimum wage that is today, many people are not able to live on that. So people need to get a fair share of their income, especially when they're putting in the work.
100, yeah, 100%. That's kind of a given, and I think that we really need to make sure that we start building in these protections, because again, I mean, we came through the pandemic, the hardest hit workers were the lowest paid workers that were on the front lines. And
Hmm.
that, we started with, Burbank did hero pay like many other cities did, where we forced employers to get to give livable wages, but all those things kind of sunsetted, and so we need to really bake in, these protections. And the best way to do it is, through unions, I believe.
Oh, absolutely. And unions have been the backbone of the economy and also the backbone of protection of the American worker. And I feel that, the more there are unions and unions that not only are economical unions, but there needs to be unions when it comes to tenants. It's like when I was at the what do you call that? The housing 101 workshop, I had mentioned that if the tenants have more control over their buildings and there is a tenants union, I think that could also benefit um, the the tenants, because most tenants are the ones that know what's going on. Many of the landlords, especially if they are corporate or hedge funds, they just tend to show up once a month to collect the rent, and that's it. They don't even live near or in the buildings where they collect the rent. So I think it's very important that there needs to be unionization of everything, not just of wages.
Okay. I like where you're going.
Well, anyway, we come out to the end of the time. I want to tell you, Eddie, thank you so much for being on the show. And For those that want to reach out to me on your side, we are on all social media platforms. We are on Spanish United, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and we are a 503 nonprofit organization. Anyone wants to donate, it's free to do so. There's no obligation. Anything that anyone gives is used to help someone in the community. And I want to tell you, thank you so much for being a guest on the show, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.
Thank you very much. Take care.
You too. Bye bye.